this is going to be super controversial, but it's a strategy that I've implemented since day one. It's something that I initially did out of insecurity, but now I do it very strategically, and it's pro bono work. Work for free. You're listening to From Star to Supernova. I am your host, Andrea. I'm a viral marketer, entrepreneur, and public speaker, and I'm here to talk about all things personal development, spirituality, business, mental health, and bring you inspiring stories to help you write yours. Are you ready for your pep talk? Okay, hablemos. Every single year of my career, I've written down the lessons that I've learned in my business and also in my life as a creatorpreneur. And I've compiled some of my favorite ones to share with you because this year marks officially 4 years of me being a creatorpreneur. I left my full-time job in August 2020 in the middle of a pandemic. And I went from being an agency owner to providing digital products to consulting, coaching, public speaking, then creating content for myself, for brands. And now it's really just almost like a mixture of all of them that I still do. I don't really do service-based offerings anymore as far as me managing social media or creating content for someone else, but rather I am almost like the architect that puts together the strategy. And then from there, I have a lot of people that I refer to for execution. But I've definitely learned my fair share. I wouldn't say that I'm a business mogul or expert, but these are just things that I feel like I really follow and I stick with whenever I'm choosing my next venture or whenever I feel like people around me want any sort of tips or advice that comes from a place of love, not really from a place of expertise. And I'm the best person to tell you about this. Absolutely not. It's really just coming from a place of there was this young woman that was just testing out the digital industry and it worked. And I was lucky and blessed to have it work. And I did go through certain hurdles that I'm going to talk about today. So without further ado, here's some golden rules that I follow in my career, learnings of 4 years as a creatorpreneur. Number one, you'll hear me say this often if you're my client, and it's raise the stakes. Whenever I'm strategizing content for someone, I typically see them mirroring the content strategy of another creator or someone that they look up to. When in reality, you can start very basic and all you have to do is raise the stakes of that basic concept. This is something I learned when I was working on 60 Day Hustle, which is a show that's out on Amazon Prime that I'm a cast member and a producer. And it is, when it comes to reality TV, you cannot just have something that's dramatic and that's it. You always have to figure out a way to raise the stakes for the next episode to be a little bit more interesting and keep that retention going. So I think that when you apply that same ideology onto content, and instead of, let's say, doing get readies with me, you just do get readies with me under 30 seconds or get ready with me with only 2 products. Or let's say that you are a foodie and you're making food content. Instead of just doing, here's a recipe that I learned from my grandma, here's a recipe that I learned from my grandma, but I'm only going to be doing it blindfolded or only going to be doing with 2 ingredients instead. You do what we call raising the stakes of the content, making it a little bit more interesting than the traditional content piece that we're looking at. So this applies to everything, whether that is a project that you're doing or whether that is a piece of content that you're putting out. Find a way to raise the stakes. A lot of people make the mistake to get caught up in how can I make it better than the competition? And they lose sight of actually raising the stake and making it better than the competition, because in reality, you're just supposed to make it 1% more interesting so that the novelty effect in our brain kicks off and it releases the same amount of dopamine as if we were looking at a brand new concept. So whenever you're making content, whenever you're doing a new project or you're starting a new venture, instead of focusing so much on what everyone else is doing and how to make it better than them, just focus on how to add a little bit of spice to something that's very simple and very basic. Number two, this is going to be super controversial, but it's a strategy that I've implemented since day one. It's something that I initially did out of insecurity, but now I do it very strategically, and it's pro bono work. Work for free. Don't get me wrong. Don't be doing it for every single person and their grandmother, but I do have a lot of clients that in the beginning were pro bono simply because I wanted to show them what I was willing to do, that ended up recommending me to my biggest contracts to date. And I was DMing celebrities or their managers, and I was being like, hey, I see that your client is not on TikTok yet, or I see that they're not creating social content and whatnot. Is it something that you need help with? If so, I'm willing to offer you 3 months for free and then provide you. And then from there, you can see whether you want to pay me or not. And I would deliver within those 3 months. And then that eventually developed on its own contract with that client. And if not, I utilized that as a case study to go to a bigger client that was willing to pay me a lot more. and sign those bigger deals. So a lot of entrepreneurs, and I have friends that I have constant debates on about this with, because they're like, no, you should never work for free. When you work pro bono, if anything, you're working on relationship building rather than bank building. And that is the way that I work. Again, a lot of my friends disagree with this, but I don't really focus on the short-sighted quick check. I focus on the long-term relationship that's willing to give me even more than I initially asked for. Number 3, always consider what you do a big deal. Hire that videographer. This is something that I learned from one of my clients. She's a socialite, and I speak about her very often because she's also a very dear friend of mine. In the beginning, when she was starting her career and when she was walking these red carpets, but no one knew who she was. Typically, when you walk red carpets, it's really awkward because sometimes it's a hit or miss. For example, I remember, I think I walked I don't remember what it was. Oh, it was a big artist's like release party, and I walked the red carpet, and nobody took a photo of me. That happens, right? Because no one knows you. And then there's others. For example, I went to I think there was the Godzilla premiere, or the what other one did I go to recently? It was a Disney one, and they have your name ready to go, and they take a photo of your name, and then they take a photo of you and whatnot, and then that's how you show up in Getty Images, right? So in the beginning, in order to make herself seem like a bigger deal, she would take her own photographer and videographer and have her follow her around throughout the whole event. And when she told me that, I'm like, wait, this makes so much sense. And then I realized a lot of other creators were doing that, or influencers were doing that to stand out. And so I think that just comes to show that you are as big of a deal as you think you are. And that doesn't mean that you have to be less humble or anything. It just has to be where you hype you have to be your biggest hype man or hype woman. And I think that when I started implementing that in my speaking engagements and whatnot, people started taking me a lot more seriously, not just because I had someone following me around with a camera, but because of the content. The quality of the content was different. And I was able to really translate that to brand partners or to potential people that would want to collaborate with me, and kind of like make them realize that, you know, in addition to the very organic UGC like content, that I also have this very much portfolio piece that allows me to show a little bit like a different version of me. Like, what is she like on stage? What is she like speaking to a camera? What is she like when the little quick effects on TikTok are not available to make her video stand out? That is what I want to go with this. I actually recently had a situation where I spoke at Alpha convention, and this is a very big convention in Las Vegas. It's actually all around the US, but this one in particular was in Las Vegas. There were thousands of people, and I had to only speak for 15 minutes. My first remarks were supposed to be 10 minutes, and then from there was like a quick introduction of other keynote speakers. And I told myself I'm not going to bring my videographer with me because it's just 15 minutes, and I'm going to make him come all the way from LA to do that in Las Vegas. And I wish I had done it because this has been by far the coolest experience. Like, they had me around with security. They were walking me backstage back and forth from the room. Like, the suite that I was on was beautiful. It was gigantic. They treated me like a princess. And honestly, I was honored by that. They definitely didn't need to go that hard, but they did. And I wish I had captured those moments, because as a little immigrant that just built her business 4 years ago, that was broke for so long, it was very special to me. And I wish I had captured that. So always consider what you do a big deal, and hire that photographer, hire that videographer. Number 4, have bad cops and good cops mentors. And what I mean by that is people that you can go to for very specific problems and get a very specific advice. I, for example, have very specific people that come to mind. Obviously, for privacy purposes, I'm not going to disclose who they are, but I have one of my mentors, for example, he's very much about the money. He's about how to take a business from 0 to 10 million right away type of shit. And I know that if I go to him with, you know, a very emotional decision that I'm making and whatnot, he's going to be like, yeah, well, is that the smartest way to scale, Andrea? Or something about him is that anytime that he misses a call from me and he goes, hey, Andrea, are you available now? And I go, yes. He goes, oh, you're too available. You're not working hard enough. Go back to work. Like that, you shouldn't be available right now. And it's funny as hell because I know that he does it jokingly, but that just comes to show the type of relationship that we have. This is the type of person that whenever I'm about to sign deals, I call him and he goes, I'm looking at the contract right now. Here's 20 ways that I could you over if I was the client that you're about to sign a contract with. And he just tells me like it is. Whereas I have other mentors that I go to for something a little bit more, I would say, emotionally driven, less logistically inclined, but a little bit more intuitively. And I go to them whenever I have a decision that's very much intuitive based or something that I'm feeling in my gut that perhaps is not the smartest move financially, but it's definitely something that's going to work for me in the long term. So definitely have a variety of mentors and make sure that you go to them with very specific purposes. Because if I go to, for example, the first one with something related to my mental health and whatnot, I might not get the response that I need at that moment. So you have to have a lot of discernment when it comes to the feedback that you allow into your life. There's a quote that I heard once, and it's feedback without a filter is just noise. So you have to make sure that you do get it from people that you look up to, that you respect, and that you are aware of the intention that they carry behind the advice. Number 5, never badmouth another entrepreneur or react to a competitor unless absolutely needed. And I'm talking about they say something about you on social media. Even if that's the case, you have to pause for a second and really reassess the situation, because there's a study that's shown that when someone else is talking bad about somebody else, even if what the other person did was rightfully so negative, the impression that we have of the person who's doing the talking is still negative because we are associating them with a negative subject. So I try my best that whenever it is that I'm talking about a strategy that I dislike, that I don't throw anyone under the bus, that I don't talk about it in a way of, oh, I'm better than them or I'm better than this and whatnot, that I very much curate the amount of opinions that I give on social media to make sure that it's always a positive experience. You never know who's watching and you never know who's going to take it a certain way. So I like to make sure that my social media, the content that I'm putting out, or at least the impact that I'm causing in other people's lives comes from a place of integrity. And integrity for me means making sure that my word is pristine. And I really like to follow that in the 4 agreements as much as I can. Do I talk with my friends? Of course. Do I talk with my therapist? Of course. I'm a human being, but I'm not out there saying, that one person has a shitty strategy, don't sign with them, because honestly, it's not worth my time. And it's just, at the end of the day, when you talk badly or poorly about somebody else, it's like drinking venom and expecting somebody else to feel that effect. It's just not worth my energy. Number 6, prepare a month in advance. And I know this one will sound super overview level, like of course you have to prepare, but no. I think that 4 weeks to prepare for a speaking engagement allows me to make appointments for any sort of like beauty treatments that I need, whether that is my hair and whatnot, or for me to order an outfit or order equipment. I only used to prepare a couple nights before a speaking engagement, and then I wonder why I was miserable the day of. Versus now, I have literally signature lists that I keep on my Google Docs that are literally things that I need to pack, things that I need for this type of speaking event or this type of other event and whatnot. And I just have them templatized so that I don't waste that much time. And trust me, it's made the biggest difference where now before a trip, I'm already packed like 3 days before. Yes, I am a Virgo. Yes, I am type A, but also it just makes my life a lot easier. So whenever you think you have enough time, add a week or 2 to that enough time that you have. Number 7, learn how your body reacts to everything. Get good sleep at all costs. Avoid dairy the day before. Avoid eating heavy before speaking engagement. These are rules that I live by when it comes to me showing up to an event or to a client or to a workshop. And I've gotten to know my body so much that I know exactly what it needs in order to be at its most effective state. I know that I need 9 hours of sleep. I know it sounds bizarre to a lot of people, but I love getting my 9 hours of sleep. And I will sacrifice whatever I need to, whether that is a dinner the night before or something really early in the morning, simply so that I can get that amount of sleep. I know that the day before, if I eat dairy, my face might break out or I might feel a little bit more swollen than typical, right? So I know how my body reacts to certain things, and I've learned them by now to the point that I don't self-sabotage the day right before a very important happening. Number 8, this is something that I learned recently as I was working on 60 Day Hustle, the TV show, and it's you always have to keep one promise. It's either speed or quality. In this whole process, we had a lot of brand partners, and a lot of the times the deadlines that we had set for a deliverable wasn't necessarily met at the time where we had promised it, because when you're working on a TV show, you're not worrying about the social content that's going to come out after. You're worrying about the actual shooting of the episodes. You're worrying about the cast and the storylines and all these other things and moving pieces behind the scenes. So obviously a lot of that speed promise wasn't kept, but you do keep the promise of quality. So remember, when you're working with clients, you have to keep one promise. Promises might look different to you. In this case, for us, it was speed or quality. In your case, it might be quantity of deliverables. It might be quality of deliverables. That's also something that we kept as well. It was quantity. Like maybe we wouldn't give you the 10 videos that we promised right away because we had other things to worry about, but we would give you 5 that were really strong pieces, enough for the client to be satisfied. So remember, in business, you have to keep one promise at all times. Number 9, follow momentum. Most entrepreneurs get caught up in what they want and they ignore their needs or where there's actual movement. I had a dear friend, I love him so, so, so much. He was having so much business on the other side of the world, but he wanted so badly for it to work on the location that he was at in LA, simply because he loved the size of the studio that he had there and this and that. And I get it, right? Like we're all attached to our current states because it feels safer and it feels familiar. And then that illusion of control kicks in and you want to stay in that specific space. But the second that he made the decision to let that studio go, his career has been glowing, blooming, and his health has gotten so much better simply because he's not worried about all these other elements. And I think that that happens to us a lot of times. But I remember in the beginning, I was so caught up with, should I let this employee go? Or should I keep them? Or should I stay in this office space or not? Oh my gosh, yeah, my office that I let go of this year. I had this beautiful office, floor to ceiling windows in Beverly Hills. It was expensive. And I loved it so much because I was able to do in-person workshops. And it's different when a young entrepreneur has an office space and whatnot. And I was so caught up in that when in reality, that overhead could have been spent in so many other resources or tools to level up my business even more. But I was so caught up in how it looked that I didn't really allow myself to let it go. And once I let it go, so many other doors started opening. And I think that when you follow momentum, where you follow the things that are already working and you ignore the things that you desperately want to cling on but are just not working anymore, that is when your career is going to start to grow a lot faster. Number 10, don't rush into partnerships. This is a mistake that I made late last year and early this year where I got so excited at the possibility of a project that I didn't really care much about the contract or about the offer that I was given. Thank God I had a good legal team that had my back, and I will always be grateful for that. And they were very honest with the type of partnership that I was entering in. And this is where, like, again, our little immigrant mindset kicks in where I'm like, well, this is good enough. I can make it work like that and whatnot. But in reality, it wasn't serving me in the long term. I was able to sever that type of partnership and restructure it in a way where it made sense for me and for the client. And it's been great. It's been great. And I think that now walking into different relationships and partnerships, now I'm going to be very clear on how I best work and how I can deliver the best results without jeopardizing their needs as well. But I think that I tend to forget a lot as an entrepreneur about what my needs, and I tend to overpromise sometimes in ways where I end up resenting the client when in reality it was my fault and my responsibility for agreeing to things that were necessarily not in my zone of genius or not in the things that I want to do. Which leads me to my next point, and is you have to have a lawyer and an accountant on speed dial. I am so grateful to have a legal team and an accountant team on speed dial. It was actually something that I invested on that month that I started my business. A lot of people were like, you're crazy for investing in that and not like in the logo or in something else that would bring me clients and whatnot. The truth is, clients are relatively easy to get, but what's even easier to get are lawsuits or partnerships that are just not aligned with you. So knocking on wood, right? Because I thank God I've never had to experience that firsthand, but I have seen a lot of my mentors go through that, and they wish they had someone having their back from the beginning, making sure that they're keeping everything very tight and in favor to the client and to yourself. So definitely have a lawyer and an accountant that you can rely on, especially as you're making big decisions. You want to make sure that you're making informed decisions. As a spiritual girly, I love talking about my intuition and my gut, but just also know that in addition to God, I also talk to my lawyer. Make sure that I'm not making any stupid decision. And the last one is probably going to be something very important to you as an entrepreneur or as a freelancer, and it is to keep a case study for every single project that you work on. Because even though a lot of people don't ask me for those anymore, I still have them handy simply in case that in the future there's an acquisition, or maybe I want to onboard a big client that wants to see a little bit more of my work. It is always very important for you to have those case studies. But in addition to that, it'll help you optimize for the next year. So if you're a creator, for example, and you're like, how does this apply to me? Like, I don't understand how this correlates to being a creatorpreneur. Your analytics are something that a lot of brands are going to be asking for. The results that you brought to other brands are so handy to have available because it'll change a brand partner's perspective of you as a creative. Because if you come up to a brand partner, typically they think influencers are just creative. They're not necessarily very business savvy. We can take advantage of them and whatnot. But if you're ready to come to a big brand and be like, actually, this is the click-through rate that I had with my content, or this is the amount of conversions that I was able to generate for this brand through this video and whatnot, you're able to A, let them know to not with you, and B, also be more prone to signing a deal because they see the results that you're bringing to the table. So whatever it is that you're doing, make sure that you keep a record on that and the results that you brought in. But anyway, I hope this was helpful. And again, if you want to have a conversation, send me a voice note or send me some memes via Instagram. I'm available at Andrea Casanova, and I hope to hear from you soon.